Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's panel on the future of athlete safety, hosted by the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. My name is Dr. Liz Taylor, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management at Temple University, where I'm also the faculty athletics representative. Over the last decade, I've been researching sexual harassment and gender-based violence in sport, education on sexual harassment and sexual assault for future sport employees, as well as athlete well-being. I'm grateful to be a part of this important conversation tonight and look forward to hearing from all of our panelists. I'm going to share a few housekeeping items before we begin. Just for reference, this event is being recorded. To protect confidentiality, we ask that you do not speak on any specific cases. I'd also like to provide a content warning. We may speak about types of misconduct that happen in sport, including sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. While we will not be getting into any details, please be advised that these topics may come up. For anyone who may need emotional support during this webinar, the Army of Survivors is available. Information on how to access that support will be provided in the chat. If you have experienced abuse or misconduct, or if you have reasonable suspicion of abuse or misconduct inflicted by someone in the U.S. Olympic or Paralympic movement, you can make a report. Go to uscenterforsafesport.org/report. Just a note on mandatory reporting. Staff at the center and participants within the movement are all mandatory reporters of child abuse and must notify law enforcement. Today's conversation will begin with introductions from our panelists, including why they are here, why they are interested in joining this conversation today. We'll then address pre-submitted questions and end by fielding live questions from the audience via the Q&A function. Let's begin with introductions. Lauren, will you please start?
Thanks, Liz. I'm Lauren Kuntz. I am on the Safe Sport Athlete Advisory Team. I have been on that for about the past 5 years since the inception. A little bit of background myself, I grew up in the sport of gymnastics and switched to track and field in college, where I became a 3-time All-American at the D3 level in the pole vault. Since then, have gone on to coach as well as compete in decathlon and double decathlon and own 2 world records. I am here largely because I have not always had the best sporting experiences. So I was a victim of sexual assault at the hands of a coach. I actually was one of the very first cases, I think, that went through the center in some of their early years. And unfortunately have also witnessed abuse of various forms by the hands of other coaches and have spoken out incredibly publicly about that. This is a mission that is very close to my heart. And part of why I joined SAT was because, well, I have not always had the best experience myself, even had struggles with safe sport early on myself, really wanted to take what I had seen in those hard parts and leverage that to make the system better. Ideally leaving a better system in place for younger generations such that what I have experienced ideally will never happen again.
Thanks for sharing that, Lauren. We're really glad to have you here. Mark, would you please go next?
Hi, my name is Mark Hemans. I'm currently the executive director for Colorado Rush Soccer Club. My background is in over 30 years of both collegiate and coaching and directing collegiate and youth soccer, where I've had about over 20 years of experience of coaching collegiate women. And oh gosh, 10 to 20 years of working in the youth sport world and space. So I'm excited to be here, excited to help out, and look forward to our dialogue.
Thanks so much, Mark. We're excited to have the athlete perspective, the coach perspective, and Sonia, if you'd go next and share a little bit about how you can share a unique perspective as well.
Sure. Thanks, Liz. Hi, my name is Sonia Keating. I am the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel for U.S. Equestrian. We are the national governing body for equestrian sport. We govern about 29 different breeds and disciplines, including 3 that are on the Olympic program and 1 that is on the Paralympic program. I've been with the organization for over 19 years, and I lead the athlete safety efforts at U.S. Equestrian. My involvement in the safe sport movement began around 2011 when I was appointed by, at the time, the US OC, now the US OPC, to one of the first working groups that set minimum athlete safety criteria for the national governing bodies on the Olympic program. We recommended creating an independent entity with expertise in abuse prevention and abuse complaint resolution for the Olympic and Paralympic movement, which is now known as the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. At the time, awareness was low around organizational abuse, and the national governing bodies lacked the necessary expertise to address it. Thankfully, much progress has been made since then. My interest in abuse prevention began when I was in college and I interned for the DA's office. And took a job right out of college before attending law school. I served as a crime victims advocate. And in my role there, I served as a liaison between crime victims and the prosecuting attorneys. We provided essential support, education, and advocacy to people that were navigating the complex and emotionally taxing judicial process. And our aim was to ensure that the victims felt heard, supported, and informed throughout the legal proceedings. As general counsel for an Olympic sport governing body, I view these athlete safety discussions as crucial for the integrity and trust within our sporting community. I think addressing the dissatisfaction from both the claimant side and the respondent side is essential, and recognizing opportunities where we can strengthen our approach. So we're 8 years into this, and it's important that we actively listen to all the stakeholders, look at what has worked really well, what has worked not so well, and chart the course for the next 8 years. So with the collaboration, we can create safer environments, we can build more trust in the institutions, and ensure that everybody feels safe and secure in participating in the processes. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all.
Thanks, Sonia. And we will end by an introduction from the interim CEO, April.
Hi, my name is April Holmes. I'm the interim CEO at the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, and I am overjoyed. I am absolutely overjoyed at this opportunity that we have, excuse me, to sit before you, to listen, to be on this call with you, just to be in the movement and understand there are so many people that are so passionate, so passionate about what we do every single day. I am a 4-time Paralympian in the sport of track and field. I'm world record holder, gold medalist. I have some bronze medals. I have some world championships. I have quite a lot of accolades in terms of athletics. But I think that my success in athletics, I appreciate my success in athletics because it came through great coaching. Throughout my career, I started athletics when I was at such a young age. I remember starting track and field and even playing basketball when I was like 5 years old. And that was my way of getting away from piano and ballet lessons, because I just, no offense to the people who do ballet and piano, but that just was not my thing. I desired a more competitive lifestyle, and I got away from getting my hands slapped for playing the wrong piano note. And nevertheless found track and field, found basketball, and I absolutely fell in love with it. But again, I've had some of the greatest coaches in the world. And I myself was not a victim of any type of sexual misconduct in my career for myself. But looking back on it, although Safe Sport did not exist at the time, I do recognize that there were some things that were happening that were not correct. And I do wish, even early in my career, that Safe Sport was around. So again, I'm interim CEO. I have been in this role for 2 years now, 2 months now. I'm sorry, 2 months now. Sometimes it feels like 2 years, but it's just been 2 months. But nevertheless, the center opened its doors about 8 years ago. And I do want to pause and give thanks and appreciation to the leadership, to the staff, to the board members, both current and former, because they've paved the way for where we are today, and they will continue to pave the way for where we go tomorrow. So huge thanks and appreciation to them, because we would not be where we are without those individuals. As many of you all know, we are in the process, obviously with me being interim, that means that we have had to have some transition in the form of our CEO, and we are actively searching for a new CEO. And that's a process, just so you all know, in case any of you all have questions, but that is absolutely a process, but one that we are We are dedicated to getting correct. But just to pause for a second and understand that there is still significant work that is being done in the center, despite the fact that we are in a leadership transition. There's significant work. There's some significant progress even that we've made in terms of athlete safety, but there still is plenty of work to do. We continue to prioritize efficiency, information sharing, trauma sensitivity. We are literally talking to so many stakeholders along the way, whether they be athletes, parents, survivors, coaches, NGBs, LAO, sport administrations, safety experts, others. I mean, you name it, we're talking to them. And this entire month for us has really been dedicated to hearing, to listening, to making those process changes that we believe will be instrumental in how we conduct the mission, how we conduct business moving forward. So there has been a ton of congressional activity around the center in the year since we began. And so we're excited about that. We're keeping an eye on that, obviously, quite frequently, because there is some legislation that is very important to how we govern, how we do the business that we do. And so I'm really excited for some of for the interest, number one, in our congressional leaders, that they also put athlete safety at the forefront of a lot of things that they do. Over the years, we've had plenty of I'll say feedback and interest in everything we do, and that brings great excitement to me, which is why I started off by telling you all that I am overjoyed by the fact that you all are here today. And by the way, we continue to want to receive that type of feedback. And so please don't stop giving it to us. I'm not here to say we're doing everything perfectly, because we're not, obviously. I'm not here to even say we're doing everything correct, because obviously we're not. But what we are doing is we're doing the things that we believe are correct in the moment. And so as long as we are doing those things with correct in the moment mentality, I'll call it, then the more and more we can do those things, and the more and more we can get feedback from you all, the greater we can be, not just as a center, but the better we can be as a sport community driving toward the mission. So we are, I'll say our next steps, right? Yeah, I'm sure you want to know what next steps are. This is literally a public forum for a discussion, so that we can talk to athletes, we can talk to parents, we can talk to survivors, we can talk to NGBs. I mean, you name it. I think we have over 300 people who have registered for this call. So we are absolutely appreciative of all you all taking the time out of your schedule to literally come here and give us your feedback. And by the way, your feedback does not go, it will not go unnoticed. It will not go unrecognized. It will not go unaddressed, I'll call it, because we do, while we have only an hour to be together today, you can best believe that we will come back to you all with some answers to some of your questions that we were not able to get to today, but that we were able to, that we believe are imperative that we answer moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Taylor. And again, thank you so very much for being here today. I really, really, really appreciate the time that you're spending with us.
Awesome. Thanks, April. We're so grateful for all of you to join us tonight and for the important conversation that we're already engaging in. Thank you to everyone in the audience who submitted questions in advance. A significant number of questions were received, so we'll do our best to get through as many as possible. We've summarized and blended similar themes in the interest of time. However, we may not be able to get to all the questions, but like April mentioned, this is just the start. And so we will have similar forums in the future. So I will open all of the questions up to any and all of the panelists who would like to jump in. They each share a very unique perspective, which I think adds a lot to the panel and will add a lot to kind of the understanding of the state of where everything is. So our first question, again, open to anyone. What would you say to those individuals who may have experienced challenges or frustrations with the center's processes? And I'll add a follow-up that may make it easier for others besides April to kind of jump in on this one. And as a follow-up, why should athletes trust the center and report to them? So anybody who wants to jump in, feel free.
I'm
I can go
happy to
first.
Go ahead. I'll let you go. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in with what I would say to athletes that have experienced frustration, because I'll say, me too, I'm there with you. I definitely have never felt like the center has been perfect, and the center has never pretended to be perfect. And one thing, though, I give the center a lot of credit for is listening to that feedback. My first few years on the SAT, we were brutally honest with them about the need to build athlete trust, the need for more transparency, the need to speed up cases. The point where we felt a bit like broken records. And I'd say even 2 to 3 years in, I was considering stepping down from the SAT, because I was just like, we've been telling them the same things. And there was actually a massive turnaround around that point, where they finally had staffed up enough in terms of their investigators that they could start dealing with all of the other issues beyond just trying to stay afloat. And in the past 2 years, well, the center still is far from perfect. I think, as April said, they're trying to make the right decision at the time. And they've been trending in a really positive direction. So the feedback I'd give would be, engage the center. Let them know when they've dropped the ball. Let them know when they have not done as well as they need to do, because it really is the mission of everybody that is involved with the center to make sport a safer environment, and to constantly improve and constantly be striving for better.
I just want to add to that from the NGB perspective is not only to share those frustrations with the center, but also with your NGB, because it's good because we're a loud voice also. So it's good for us to hear from those, whether it's a claimant or respondent or witnesses that are going through the processes. We understand how stressful it is. And so any frustrations, we might not be able to change the circumstances, but certainly can be another voice to provide that feedback.
Thank you. I absolutely want to piggyback off of what Lauren said. And it is just that we are all frustrated, right? We are all frustrated because we want great things to happen, because we expect great things to happen. So because we're already always frustrated, or already frustrated, I'll say, that frustration does not land just with you being, say, athlete, just with you being coach, just with you being parents. Our staff is frustrated. Our board is frustrated. Our leadership is frustrated, because when we make the decisions that we make it with a commitment to the movement, right? And so when these procedures that we implement, when these conversations that we have don't turn out to be exactly what we wanted them to be, we are all frustrated. So we share in your frustration. I'm frustrated also, but that doesn't stop the work, right? That does not stop the work. That shouldn't stop the work. Like, frustration should never stop the work that we all still have to do. So it's an obligation of ours to do the work, but it's also obligation of yours to give us that feedback of saying, this is not working. Can I share with you a way that we can do it better? Can I share a way with you that that we can improve in the process? And so, by the way, this work that we do every single day, there is nothing glamorous about it. It is grueling work, but we are committed to it. We have an entire staff very committed to it, entire NGB support system that is very committed to it, USOPC very committed to it, our parents, our supporters, like, everyone is committed to this work. And so it is very frustrating when it does not work the way we expect it to work. So again, I implore you to continue to give us that feedback, continue to share ways in which you believe that we can evolve as an organization, continue to share ways you believe that we can just evolve in terms of the policies and procedures that we continue to implement. And so the more and more you give us, the more and more we're listening, the more and more we're learning. And hopefully we're getting better so that our moments of frustration will be minimal as time goes on.
I would just say one last thing on that is I would encourage people not to let their frustration become silence, because if you allow yourself to be silent, then individuals in authoritative positions, whether directors or individuals at Safe Sport, they won't know, and they won't be able to provide any guidance or feedback or direction as to how to go. And if you don't say anything because you're frustrated or whatnot, or it's taking too long, or it's going to take too long, and you think you're not going to be heard, then of course we won't be able to rectify certain wrongs and address things. So I would encourage people not to be silent, but to be heard, so individuals at Safe Sport can do the work that they want to do.
Thanks, everyone, for those insights. I'm going to move on to the next question. And I'm going to ask Sonia and Mark to be the first ones to kind of jump in here, because I think this is a great question for y'all in your role with the NGB and as a coach and program director. The good guys follow protocols and become cleared coaches. Most people would not allow anyone to be a coach who didn't meet all the requirements. How can you make sure leagues follow the requirements, and how can you ensure that leagues follow their own requirements?
Do you want me to start with that, Sonia?
Sure.
So-
Since it's directed at leagues.
Yeah, it's leagues. Well, there's certain protocols that we follow. We obviously know that all our individuals who work closely with the young athletes have to be Safe Sport certified. So in order for them to even, step on a field, we need them to be certified, and they need to go through the course. That's just part and parcel. We also, so on a proactive side, I know we talked about this on a pre-panel discussion. In our club, we had worked with Safe Sport to kind of do a kind of a Q&A tutorial in person for our club and the coaches within our club. So, not only do we want to take a proactive approach of getting our coaches certified via Safe Sport, but more importantly, to give them an opportunity to go face to face with members of Safe Sport in order to address concerns, both, being accused of Safe Sport or getting accused, and how you handle that and how you go if that ever happens, but also identifying certain situations where ultimately we can help these young athletes. So it's a little bit of twofold, but that's kind of hopefully a nutshell version or a Cliff Note version of what we do on our side.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we're not a club-based sport, and we don't have leagues, but in terms of how we can ensure that policies and whatnot are being followed, I mean, I think one thing that's really important is awareness, and constantly raising awareness, not only around the policies or through the Safe Sport training, raising awareness about the MAP policies. It's very important that those are followed, and also raising awareness about how to report violations. So we really want to make sure that everybody in the community is well aware of where they can report. At Equestrian, we've tried to remove as many barriers as possible. We've implemented the Real Response, which is an anonymous texting platform, and tried to, again, remove any barriers. So there's multiple ways to report violations. We've tried to implement on-site visits, inspections that we do of facilities, and we've tried to incorporate some of what I'll call the Safe Sport elements into that. And also from the officials, trying to ask the right questions of the officials to get feedback to ensure compliance.
Thank you. April, was there anything you wanted to add from your perspective?
I just want to add that I had a mishap in that I forgot to include the officials in this conversation, because they are absolutely huge. So thank you, Sonia, for pointing out the officials, right? Because when we talk about good guys and gals, I'll say guys and gals, because I know the conversation, because the question kind of really dictated guys, but I'm going to say guys and gals. There are plenty of good guys and gals in the sporting industry, like whether or not they're coaches, athletes, and parents, officials, administrators. Like, I am appreciative and I am thankful for the good people, right? Because it's the good people that give you hope every single day. And it's those people that are on the front lines, hopefully fighting for us to have goodness happen in sport every single day in every single situation. Obviously, we know that's not possible, but at least that as long as we keep hoping that that's the case, then the better off we are. I know in terms of like some of the work that we do in terms of, I'll say in terms of education, right? Because when you think about all of the coaches, all of the athletes, a lot of the parents, even administrators, they have to be Safe Sport certified in order to get to, I think Mark alluded to this, that they have to be Safe Sport certified in order to get on the field to play. So we're thankful for that. And a lot of the certification really started at the higher elite level, and it's trickling down day by day to the grassroots level, because education starts there. And the more and more we can educate our young people about what this abuse looks like, hopefully the more and more, the less and less, I'll say, cases that actually come either to the NGBs or even to us here at the Center for Safe Sport. And we're really ramping up that type of engagement that we're doing on the grassroots level. Like I said, we've been doing it for a number of years on elite level, but we're really ramping up those opportunities to educate our young people, to audit the NGBs and holding them accountable, really, for what their responsibility is as it relates to our athletes day in and day out. So definitely appreciate the entire movement that has chipped in and continues to really safeguard our sports, so that the athlete of today, as well as the athletes of tomorrow, will have hope and belief in the system that they can go through their entire athletic career without having any incidents of sexual misconduct happen to them or either their teammates.
Thanks everyone for sharing those thoughts. Here's the next one, and this is a great one for everyone to kind of share their unique perspective. What do you see as your specific role in changing sport culture, and what are some of the most pressing challenges? Maybe Lauren, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, it's a great question and a tough one, because part of it is I wear so many different hats in sports. So it's kind of like which hat has a little bit of a different way of doing this. And I think on the ground, wearing my athlete hat, the first and foremost for me is trying to be super honest and share my experiences, good and bad, in sport. I think too often they're not talked about. Particularly for me, a lot of what I've tried to do is shine a light less so on what are the specifics of my case and my experience, and more so what were the systemic issues that enabled somebody to get in a position where they were able to take advantage of me. Because there were so many failings when it came to that. Failings in terms of how I was educated, how I was unable to recognize grooming processes. I didn't even know that word until years later. Failures in terms of other coaches seeing signs and red flags and not wanting to speak up. Failures in terms of incentive structures, in terms of what are coaches rewarded for, that don't necessarily always align with what we ultimately care about when it comes to athlete safety. And I think as an athlete, I try to just be the voice in the room as much as possible and say, here's what I've seen, here's what I've learned, do with that what you will. But for me, having that conversation and being a part of it is one of the biggest ways that I feel like I'm able to help shift the sporting culture.
I go back to awareness. I think the awareness on healthy boundaries is really, really important. How to report violations, accountabilities is really important too, I think, in changing the culture, but also ensuring that we're not complacent about our standards and our policies, that we're constantly evolving and always questioning if what we're doing is enough. As we learn more about abuse prevention, ensuring that we're implementing the safeguards and strategies to continue to move us forward, and really creating this culture where people feel safe, and they're safe reporting and safe participating in the processes without fear of some type of retaliation or retribution. I think we have a ways to go with that. I think that's a challenge in my sport. I hear quite a bit, is this fear of retaliation. And my hope is that, eventually we're going to get to a place where people are rewarded for intervening, for pointing out these kind of wrongful conduct, if you will, and people won't have that fear that if they get involved, there's going to be some type of retribution.
I think just from our end, I think it's more of trying to anticipate things and get ahead of things before they hopefully don't, to avoid them from happening. And so whether that come from educating our coaches as much as possible through, whether we do tutorials or just constant education. But again, we just want to try to get ahead of things so we're not reacting to it. and I, giving them an opportunity or arming them with information on how to see things, hopefully before they happen, because a lot of it's very reactionary, unfortunately, because of what it is, and it happened. Has already happened, but are there ways of preventing something prior to it even potentially happening? So if we can educate, inform, and give them a platform to learn from, so we can hopefully avoid some of these things, that would be fantastic.
I want to piggyback a little bit off of what Mark said, and he said, educate and inform. So my specific role in changing sport culture is really about bringing my athlete experience to the forefront, doing what we say we're going to do, being accountable for what we say our mission is and what we believe in. Like those type of I'll say action items are what will drive the decision making that happens at this organization, both today and moving forward. Learning how to listen, right? And learning as we go along, because right now I'm literally leading an organization of 130 some people, and that the entire world, not just this country, right, but the entire world is looking at, because there are so many countries that are part of the Olympic movement, Olympic and Paralympic movement, that do not have a safe sport organization. And they're calling, they're asking, they're emailing, they're inviting us to talk to them about how they get their safe sport organization up and running. And it helps a lot because I'm sitting here. It helps a lot because I have that athlete experience. It also helps a lot in terms of us building trust, not just here, but also around the world. So the more and more we can have those type of conversations, the more and more we can share what we've done, the more and more that I can even, interject what I've learned as an athlete and what the athlete experience is like, the greater organization that we can continue to form, and the bigger of an impact that we will have on safe sport, not just here in the United States, but also around the world.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for those important perspectives. I'm encouraged by your passion. I think that's one thing that you've all been really able to show so easily through your responses, is that you're very passionate about athlete safety and kind of moving us forward in our progress. So the next couple of questions are more specific to the center, but again, I'd love to hear everybody's unique perspective. So the next question is, how does the center plan on addressing long investigation wait times and the backlog of cases awaiting review? How many cases are currently awaiting review? I feel like maybe it's given, but I'll kick that off to April to kind of start the conversation there.
Such a wonderful question, Dr. Taylor. Where do I begin? For a claimant that is in our system, one day is too long for them, because every single day that goes by is a day that they are hurting. Every single day that goes by is a day that they are looking for answers. Every single day that goes by, they are just agonizing with when is the pain going to stop? And so I understand, I recognize, our staff recognizes, the world even recognizes that there are some cases that we have had in our system that have taken way too long. Some of them have taken years to bring to a close, for there to be a decision rendered. And again, one day is just way too long. So you can imagine someone waiting for years. And so we've done a lot in terms of trying to figure out how to, and listening to people, whether they be in law enforcement, whether they be in counseling, whether they be athletes, whether they be parents. How can we reduce the amount of time a case takes? And we have gotten so much better with that, so much better with that, that there are very, very few cases that now that we have in our system that have been years coming to a decision. Again, I'm not proud of the years, but I also am not proud of anything taking more than a day. Now, I said all that to say that there are a lot of times that a lot of cases are very complex. There's plenty of witnesses, right? There may be even plenty of respondents. There are plenty of people involved where there's interviews that need to take place. Sometimes law enforcement is also part of the process. And so again, while I would love for every case to only take a day or not even a day, that's not realistic. It's just not realistic. And so we've announced a series of process improvements last year. This time, we are hoping within the next couple months, hopefully we'll be able to get some data out to you all so that you'll understand, like, we listen to you, we make these process improvements, and hopefully, again, they translate to a shorter amount of time for our cases. But again, I hear you. I feel you and feel for you. And I truly, truly, truly hope that you recognize that we're evaluating this process. We're evolving in this process. We're only 8 years old. And I think we're doing a tremendous job. We just have to do a little bit better.
Thank you so much for those insights, April. I'm going to move on to the next question, again, center specific, but please feel free to jump in. How is the center treating minor on minor cases? Are parents allowed to be present during interviews with minors?
Sonia, you said, that meant you wanted to jump in and answer a question.
Well, I wasn't on mute. I don't even know the answer, to be honest, from the center, but the NGBs, we manage the non-sexual misconduct abuse allegations, which oftentimes do involve a minor. Now, we're not permitted to, obviously, to talk one-on-one to a minor. We'll get permission to do an interview. Sometimes there is a counselor or therapist involved, which oftentimes makes it better. And as a parent, I've got 3 daughters that I raise. So as a parent, my perspective's a little bit different, but I have seen where the minors feel more safe in sharing their perspective or sharing what they know when the parent is not present. And we've had these, I said, because these are difficult and they're challenging, but we've had situations where they didn't want to talk with the parent present. And if they had a therapist involved, oftentimes they wanted an opportunity to provide information outside of an interview if the parent was present. So I don't know from the center's perspective what their policy is, but it can be very difficult, especially with parents that are aggressive or have very strong feelings about the situation, because sometimes it's hard to leave those. And as a parent, I get it, to leave those at the door and truly just let this interview or this opportunity to talk come from the minor without any type of interference, if you will. I don't know if I explained that very well, but I think those can be very challenging situations.
Sonia, thank you for that, because while I am not a parent, I thought about this morning, literally, as I was brushing my teeth. I'm like, my mother to this day will go to great lengths to protect me, and I'm grown, right? And so I think about, like, as it relates to minors, even when I was a minor, my mother went to great lengths to protect me and my sisters. And I imagine that that same thing is happening with parents to minors, to children, to their children all around the world. And so I imagine, I'm gonna say I imagine because I don't know for a fact, because again, I'm not a parent. I imagine it is a traumatic experience for a parent to hear
Mhm.
that their child is either a claimant or a respondent in any case that is reported to the center, that is reported to NGBs. I can just imagine the trauma that a parent goes through. Now, fast forward to the conversation with the young person, the minor. There were some things when I was a kid that I would not tell my mother because I was afraid of what the response might be. To this day, I am also still in that space of, I'm not telling my mom that. I don't feel like hearing her mouth. I don't know what she'll do. I mean, kids think of all kinds of things in their brain about why I should or shouldn't do this or that, right? And so fast forward to the center, right? We are literally like doing everything we can to grasp the information that is being given to us, whether it's by a claimant or whether it's by a third party, anonymous party. We're grasping this information and then we're trying to decide what to do about this, right? And so we've made a lot of positive developments over the past year or so in regards to best practices for interviewing minors. So much so that we have a specialized interview team that literally they have very specific training on how to talk to minors, how to get minors to talk, for that matter. Because to your point, Sonia, sometimes minors don't even want to talk. And so that sometimes involves many other people to kind of get this conversation, to get the facts, to get the information that we need to get. But there's also one other thing that I want to make sure that I point out before we move along, because I know we have to, is that all minors can have an advisor in the room when they're being interviewed, and they can also have a support person. There's one caveat. If that parent is in the role of like they're a witness to the case, or they're somehow involved as a party to the case, then they're not allowed to be in the room. So parents often say, well, why can't my kid be in the room? There's a process and there's a reason. And it's not because we want to separate you from your kid. It's absolutely not. That is absolutely not the reason. The only reason you can't be in a room is if you are a witness, and you can't be in a room is if somehow you are a party to the case. But otherwise, you are allowed to be in the room. But understanding you being in the room may be protecting your kid, and it may not be protecting your kid, especially if you are a parent anything like my mother, because I was very fearful of, and still to this day, I always wanted to protect her, and I know she always wanted to protect me and my sisters. And so again, we've made some tremendous improvements over the past year or so in regards to our process. And again, this is yet another opportunity for you to continue to reach out to us if you feel like there are some improvements that we can make, that we need to be making. I know I've heard from a number of parents already since in the 2 months that I've been sitting in the seat. I've heard from a number of parents, and I appreciate you. I hear you. I can't even imagine some of the pain and agony you are dealing with. But I promise you that we are listening. We hear you. And we would love to hear from you some more in the event that this is not, that this process that we are engaged in, that you do not believe that it is the best thing for minors, not just your kid, but also minors around the world. So thank you.
Thank you for those insights, Sonia and April. I do want to mention, you probably have seen them come through, but some folks on our team are putting in some documents about the process of involving minors, interviewing minors, frequently asked questions, that sort of thing. So if you have more questions, please follow those links to access the documents provided through the center. I'm going to ask our final pre-submitted question, and then we'll open the Q&A function following the responses from our panelists. So please, if you are in the audience and have questions, get your questions ready because we will open the Q&A function shortly. So the final question, how is the center training investigators to recognize grooming or covert emotional abuse or coercive control? And as a follow-up, what is the center doing to ensure investigators are trauma sensitive? So I'll direct that probably toward you again, April, but others feel free to chime in here from your experiences or insights.
it's not fair, Dr. Taylor. Why do I always have to be the person? No, I'm joking with you. It's interesting because I was out in LA last week, and we were meeting with some individuals that are part of the safe sport movement, I'll call it. And I always I marvel at this job because I'm learning things every single day. Like, I will tell you all day long, I don't know everything. But some of the things I was learning was just, it literally blew my mind. I'll reference the conversation that I had with someone, and it was around Christmas gifts. And there was an administrator there, and they said they had to tell their coaches they can't give the kids Christmas gifts. And I'm like, it's Christmas. Give the kids gifts if they don't have a gift. Like, give the kids a Christmas gift. And they're like, April, that could be looked at as grooming. It might start with the Christmas gift, but it could also, lead to, obviously sexual misconduct. And I'm like, I never saw that. It took for that story to come to me, for me to even understand that something as simple as a Christmas gift could be viewed as grooming, or laying the tracks, right, for grooming behavior. And so that blew my mind. Again, I'll tell you all day long, I am learning. I'm listening, I'm learning. And to know that, like, we've gone to great lengths to really make sure that we're training our coaches, our staff, our athletes, our parents, like, to be able to recognize that. And to know it may not just be a Christmas gift. It may be something else, or it might have started with the Christmas gift. And so the more we can educate everyone in the movement, the more we can recognize the signs before they really happen. Excuse me, I know between our social media page, our app, all the training, the publications, like all of that, we are very, very diligent in putting those things out there, so we can educate the mission at the end of the day, the people that are part of the mission. And there are so many, like, between our onboarding processes, even when our response and resolution department is literally talking about, like, what does that look like, and how can we teach our staff? How can we teach the community? How can we teach our referees, our athletes, our coaches, our administrators, like everyone? How can we teach what grooming might look like? How can we teach what emotional and physical misconduct might look like? How can we teach all of these things? So the more and more we teach them, the more and more we can recognize these things, so that the more and more, that hopefully the less and less that these instances will happen. Because one of the things that is just, I'll say, even if you look at any of our reports that have come out over the years, our climate survey, and things like that, we literally talk about how many cases we started off receiving when we first opened up the center, how many cases we started off receiving, and how we are literally up to thousands. I mean, we get like 8,000 cases a year in terms of the number of cases that we actually receive. And so again, the more and more we can educate the community, the more and more we can hopefully stop this type of behavior from happening. And the mission, I don't know if the mission will ever be complete, so to speak, but the less and less people that are victims of sexual misconduct and things like that, I think the better off we are.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your perspectives and experiences. We know these are challenging topics to discuss, and we're thankful of your willingness to engage in this important conversation. At this time, we're going to open up the Q&A function for live questions. As a reminder, please refrain from asking questions about specific cases. Also, while challenging questions are welcomed, please refrain from any inappropriate language or behavior. Finally, there are well over 100 participants on this webinar, so please be generous with each other so as many participants as possible have the opportunity to ask questions. We'll get to as many questions as we can, like in the last round. All right, so I'm going to jump in with this first question. Today's conversation spent about 80% or more on investigations and only about 20% or less on prevention. What does that tell us about Safe Sport as an organization, and where we are, the people of sport, and where we, the people of sport, choose to focus on?
Do you want any of us just to jump in?
Yeah, go ahead and just jump in.
I think that's a great observation. And I, we have been responding to questions that were submitted in advance. And I have to say, a lot of what we hear in my sport is typically feedback about what could be better, if you will, and is typically centered on the response and resolution process. But I think it's a good point about, how much time are we focusing and investing on the prevention efforts. I think one of the best things that has occurred since the center launched are the MAP policies. And that instead of, everything being reactive, I think, Mark, you talked about that a little bit earlier, that we actually have proactive policies in place that are intended to help prevent the abuse from occurring in the first place. So if we can enforce those and create this culture where people are minimizing those contacts between the adults and the minors, it's going to remove so many opportunities to groom the athletes and then abuse the athletes. But I think that the prevention efforts are the future. And as I said earlier, us not staying complacent and really trying to keep pace with best practices, stay ahead where we can, and implement these proactive policies will be critical to where we see the sport in terms of athlete safety 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Lauren, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. I saw you unmuted.
I think to add to that, the unfortunate reality is that when abuse happens, those are the times when there's a lightning rod issue, right? Like that's the time there's a spotlight really shown on what happens. And while that is where the majority of the conversation still focuses, I think we've actually made some pretty big strides in the fact that people know what the word grooming is. Like that is a massive change compared to when I was young and growing up in sports. I definitely could not have told you that. I would have said it's brushing your hair, right? Like I think there is a lot of progress being made on that front. But I think there is a little bit as well as prevention is harder to talk about because we all have accountability. Like that requires literally every one of us to be paying attention, to take the training seriously, to raise our hand and say, why is that coach having massages one-on-one with an athlete? Why is that coach suddenly not talking to their athlete? Why is that coach yelling to their athletes to get the sand out of their vagina? Right? Like a lot of that prevention stuff are generally things that don't cross a clear red line in the sand. They're things that it's like, oh, that rubs me, maybe not great, but it's not bad enough for me to do anything. And I think that is a harder conversation for all of us to have is, no, that is the part we're all responsible for.
I can just comment from a club perspective or a youth sports perspective. And I know we try to take a proactive approach where, I mean, such things as we actually, when our staff is traveling, they don't travel with teams. And when they stay at certain locations, as you can imagine, showcase events or whatnot, we have our staff stay separate away from the teams. And is it, it's not necessarily, an assumption of guilt or something. It's just to avoid any sort of potential misunderstandings or potential, anything. We just rather eliminate that as opposed to or not. So anytime our coaches obviously have any meetings with players, as whether it be a full team or individual, it's a multiple people in public settings, stuff like that. Just basically trying to get ahead of it as much as you can. Again, it's about being proactive, hopefully, as opposed to reactive. But those are just kind of like small steps we try to take just to kind of avoid any sort of potential problems that might arise as opposed to reacting to something that might have already happened.
Absolutely. I want to ask one more question to you, April, that I think is a really important one before we wrap it up.
No.
What are the additional resources needed or missing from Safe Sport to improve case resolution timelines?
Resources. I'm going to start with the most obvious resource that is the case because we have while we have received increased substantially the amount of cases that we actually receive in reported to the center, our funding has not changed. And so that's, I mean, you're asking us, and not that we're not complaining, by the way. I just want you to know that we're not complaining, but we have the same amount of money that is being given to us from federal legislation that was given to us early on in our process 8 years ago. But yet we receive, substantially more cases. And so that is one of the things I can tell you right now, that is absolutely one of the things. The other is listening and feedback, right? We need we need to hear from you in order to understand exactly some of the concerns that you all have about the process that we have. Is it working for you? Or do you have a better recommendation? And we're beginning to have these conversations more and more. This, by the way, will not be the last of the conversations that we even have, that we open it up for a panel for basically for the world to join if they would like. Because we need to hear from you. So you asked for one of the things that we need. We need more funding for sure. 2 is we need to hear from you more. And 3, we need to do a better job of educating, not just you, or we need to do a better job, I guess, to Lauren's point, is educating ourselves and also taking accountability for the things that we do and that we do not do. Of course, it starts with us, but it also includes every single last one of you who are on the call today.
Thank you. And we are about out of time. I just want to send a reminder that we will be hosting future discussions. I know we didn't get to even a fraction of the questions that were asked. There were so many great ones. So like April said, continue to bring your questions, continue to share your experiences and insights. Before I invite April to share some final remarks, I want to thank everyone for joining. The recording of this webinar will be made available on the center's website in the near future. And the center will be providing a follow-up survey if you're interested in providing feedback. And with that, April, please share any closing words.
I can't reiterate enough to you all how much we want to hear from you, how much we want to work with you, how much we need you in order to continue to make this work. I appreciate you all for being here today. I want to thank Dr. Taylor. I want to thank Lauren. I want to thank Sonia, and I want to thank Greg for being here. I'm sorry, Mark. Sorry, Mark. I say Greg, but it's Mark. I apologize. I'm thinking about Greg earlier today, but conversation I had with Greg earlier today, but nevertheless. And I want to thank each and every one of you who took your time out of your schedule to listen, to submit your questions, to just be here, to be more informed about what Safe Sport is doing, what we're trying to do, what we need you to do, because there are so many more opportunities moving forward where you can engage with us. We look forward to it. Thank you to the athletes, to the parents, to literally to everyone involved today, because it takes every single last one of us. It takes all of us to make this mission possible, the mission of safeguarding our athletes, because now that we all know better, we are now expected to do better. Again, as I stated to you earlier, this here work that we're doing, there's nothing glamorous about it. There's nothing glamorous about it. It's gruesome. But in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, I want to close and literally just tell you all that I refuse, and hopefully you refuse also, to allow hatred, to allow I'll call it ill will, to permeate the lives of our athletes. I refuse to allow that. And hopefully you refuse to allow that also. So thank you again very, very much for being here. I look forward to many opportunities to connecting with you all. And I am here, as well as our 130 some staff members. We are here trying to get it right, because we absolutely do believe in the mission, and it's not possible without you. Thank you.